Hey man, the fear of her leaving is what destroys most men long before she ever does. You start living in anticipation of loss. Every silence feels like a warning. Every argument feels like a countdown. You start analyzing her tone, her texts, her mood, trying to find signs of what's coming. But here's the truth, that most men never realize: she doesn't have to leave to make you lose yourself. The moment you start worrying about her leaving, you've already handed her the power to do it. You start walking on eggshells, softening your edges, agreeing when you don't believe, holding back when you should speak, all to avoid a breakup that your fear is secretly manifesting. Because energy doesn't lie, brother. A man afraid to be left will always be treated like he's disposable. You've probably felt it, that quiet anxiety in your chest when she pulls back slightly, that subtle panic that makes you check her phone activity, overthink her tone, or replay the last conversation to find what you did wrong. That's the weakness women sense instantly. Because feminine energy is intuitive, it can smell fear the way wolves smell blood, and once she feels you're afraid of losing her, her perception of you changes. You're no longer the man she chose because of his self-assured calmness. You're now a reflection of insecurity. And a woman can't emotionally trust a man who's scared to be alone. The truth is, you were never supposed to worry about her leaving. You were supposed to focus on not losing yourself while she's still here. A man's power isn't measured by how long someone stays. It's measured by how stable he remains when they don't. If you need her presence to feel at peace, your peace was never real. It was dependency wearing confidence as a mask. You don't need someone to stay in order to be strong. You need to be strong enough that their absence doesn't break you. Because strength isn't built in comfort, it's built in the silence after someone walks away. When you stop fearing her departure, you stop bending for validation. You stop chasing her approval like it's oxygen. You start moving with a quiet kind of power. The kind that says, I want you, but I don't need you. And that's the energy women can't replace. Because every man wants her, but very few can live peacefully without her. And that peace is what separates the rare from the ordinary. You don't have to act indifferent, you just have to be whole. The man who's whole doesn't fear loss. He understands it's part of life. Most men think love means attachment, but attachment is what creates fear, not love. When you're attached, you start believing her presence is responsible for your happiness. That's why when she leaves, you break, because your emotional foundation was built on her consistency instead of your own strength. But the man who truly understands love knows that people can leave, and he'll still be fine, because he's anchored in something deeper: purpose, direction, inner fulfillment. He's not afraid of absence because he's already filled the void that most people are running from. Women test men emotionally, often without realizing it. They'll pull away to see if you crumble. They'll act distant to see if you chase. They'll provoke emotions to see if you react. Not because they want to ruin you, but because they want to feel your strength. When she feels your stillness, her anxiety calms. But when you panic, her fear grows. Because if you can't regulate yourself during her emotional chaos, how can she trust you to lead through real-life storms? The man who doesn't fear losing her becomes the anchor she can't drift from. You need to understand something that will free you forever. A woman can't truly leave a man she respects. She can walk away physically, she can block your number, she can even tell herself she's done. But in her mind, she'll always replay the energy of a man she couldn't break. That's why you should never fear her walking away. Because if you remained composed, grounded, and emotionally unshaken, she'll carry your presence long after she's gone. And ironically, that's what makes her want to come back. Not your messages, not your begging, your peace. When you fear her leaving, you start trying to prevent what you can't control. You overgive, you overexplain, you overpromise. You do everything but the one thing that matters: stay still. Women don't respect emotional bargains. The more you try to earn her presence, the less she values it. Because you can't inspire love through effort, you inspire it through energy. When your energy says, I'm not afraid to lose what isn't meant for me, you start attracting everything meant for you. And that includes better versions of her, or better women entirely. A woman leaving you doesn't mean you lost something precious. Sometimes it's just life clearing a path for your evolution. Because when you're too attached to someone who doesn't align with your growth, the universe won't ask, it'll remove. And at first, it feels like punishment, but later you'll see it was protection. The pain of her absence is often just the discomfort of detoxing from an emotional dependency. Once you make it through that, you don't just move on, you level up. You become more peaceful, more confident, more powerful. And here's the irony, when you finally stop worrying about her leaving, that's when she starts worrying about losing you. Because peace changes the polarity. When she feels you've accepted every outcome, when she realizes her distance doesn't shake you, her instinct flips. The emotional control she had over you dissolves. She starts replaying your silence, wondering if you've truly let go. And that's when she feels something deeper than regret. She feels respect, because you showed her what most men can't, the strength to let go without collapsing. The truth is, fear of abandonment is one of the oldest wounds inside a man's heart. It begins long before the woman you're thinking about now. It starts the first time you felt unseen, unchosen, unappreciated. So when she pulls away, it's not just her leaving that hurts. It's every unhealed part of you rising back up, reminding you of the boy who felt invisible. But that's exactly why this pain is a teacher, not a punishment. Because when you learn to stand alone without fear, you stop being controlled by that wound. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop needing validation. You start leading from calm instead of trauma. You have to remember, brother, people who are meant for you don't need to be convinced to stay. You don't have to perform to earn their affection. You don't have to manipulate silence or overextend your kindness to keep them interested. Love that requires anxiety to maintain was never love. It was control disguised as connection. Real love doesn't make you afraid. It grounds you. It gives you space to breathe. It lets you be yourself without punishment. And if she leaves when you show your truth, thank her. Because she just exposed that her love depended on illusion, not reality. Most men don't realize that when a woman leaves, she's not just walking away from the man, she's walking away from the mirror he held up to her. If you were calm, stable, confident, and she wasn't ready to match that energy, she'll run. Not because you failed her, but because you triggered the parts of her that couldn't handle peace. The world taught her to equate love with drama, attention with affection, chaos with passion. So when she meets your silence, it feels uncomfortable, too unfamiliar to trust. But make no mistake, that discomfort will haunt her, because true masculine calm lingers longer than excitement ever could. Don't beg for closure. Don't demand explanations. Silence will tell you everything you need to know. If her energy shifts, let it. If her attention fades, release it. You can't chase what's meant to exit your life. When she leaves, you don't chase the door. You stand in the room and rebuild yourself. Because the version of you that existed during that relationship was only a fragment of who you're becoming. Losing her might just be the universe's way of giving you back to yourself. A woman's departure often reveals what her presence was hiding, your dependence. You thought you were in control, but your emotions were quietly addicted to her reassurance. That's why it hurts so much when she's gone. It's not just her absence, it's withdrawal. You were feeding off her validation, but once you face that truth, you take your power back. You stop needing her to calm your mind, because you start cultivating your own peace. The moment you master that, no one can emotionally enslave you again. The worst thing you can do after she leaves is chase what's already left, because that chase doesn't make her stay. It convinces her she was right to go. Nothing destroys attraction faster than a man who trades his dignity for attention. You have to understand, her absence isn't an invitation to prove your worth. It's an opportunity to remember it. When you walk away with grace, you communicate something words never could. I loved you enough to let you go, and I respect myself enough to not follow. That message echoes louder than any text ever will. Don't let loneliness fool you into thinking she was irreplaceable. What you're missing isn't her. It's the version of yourself that existed when she was around. The laughter, the excitement, the comfort, those weren't hers. They were yours reflected through her. You created those moments. You felt those emotions, which means they'll exist again, just not through her. So don't mourn the woman, mourn the illusion. And then remind yourself that if you created it once, you can create it again. Stronger, purer, more aligned. You'll reach a point where her absence starts feeling peaceful. At first, it's strange. The silence that used to sting begins to feel like space. You stop checking your phone. You stop hoping for closure. You stop replaying memories like old songs. That's when healing begins. Not when she comes back, but when you stop needing her to. Because true healing isn't moving on from her. It's moving on from the version of yourself that thought you needed her to survive. Remember this: when she leaves, she's not taking anything you can't rebuild. She might take her laughter, her affection, her attention, but those are replaceable. What's not replaceable is your sense of purpose, your discipline, your inner calm. That's the real treasure, because those things don't depend on anyone. They live inside you. And when you nurture them, you become the kind of man who doesn't fear loss, because he's already full from within. And here's the truth that will set you free. When you stop fearing her absence, you create the space for something greater, your evolution. Most men spend their lives trying to keep relationships alive that are meant to expire. They fight endings instead of mastering renewal. But endings are sacred. They break your ego. They humble your spirit. They force you to rebuild from a higher place. And once you've rebuilt, you look back at what you were begging for, and you realize it was never loss, it was liberation. There comes a point in every man's life when he finally understands that no matter how much he loves someone, he can't stop them from leaving if they've already decided to. That realization used to scare you, but now it starts to bring peace. Because you see, love isn't about control, it's about acceptance. It's about standing firm enough to say, if you stay, I'll give you my best. And if you go, I'll still be whole. That's when your energy starts to change completely. You stop moving like a man in fear and start walking like one in faith. You stop grasping for what's leaving and start growing into what's coming. That shift from grasping to groundedness is what separates boys from men. Because a boy needs to hold on to feel safe. But a man understands that letting go is also an act of strength. When you stop worrying about her leaving, you become unshakable. You stop arguing to be understood. You stop explaining your worth. You stop trying to decode her emotions as if they're puzzles designed to prove your intelligence. Instead, you realize they're just weather patterns passing through. And while everyone else is chasing the forecast, you're building shelter. That shelter is your discipline, your mission, your routine, your peace. That's the foundation of masculine energy. Not control, not possession, but self-governance. The man who controls himself doesn't need to control others, and that's the kind of energy that draws everything he once chased. Because stability is magnetic, not loud, not desperate, just quietly powerful. Most men don't realize that when they fear a woman leaving, they stop being attractive. It's not because women are cruel or cold, but because fear changes your frequency. It turns your energy from confident to cautious, from natural to needy. And women feel that. They might not say it, but they sense it instantly. That's why your silence doesn't scare her when it's anxious. It only moves her when it's peaceful. The difference is everything. Because peace communicates, I am whole without you. Anxiety communicates, I need you to feel whole. The first attracts, the second repels. And the tragedy is most men never learn that until it's too late. If you want to stop worrying about her leaving, start living like a man whose presence can't be replaced. Not because of arrogance, but because of purpose. The man who's constantly improving himself, mentally, emotionally, physically, becomes the storm she never fully escapes. When she walks away from him, she doesn't find peace, she finds emptiness. Because she can't replicate the way his energy grounded her, the way his silence felt safe, the way his composure forced her to confront her own instability. And deep down, that's what women crave. Not chaos, not control, but consistency. The kind that can't be manipulated because it comes from within. You'll start noticing that the less you care about being left, the more she starts holding on tighter. Because nothing confuses feminine energy like indifference rooted in peace. She expects anger, guilt, or pleading. But when you respond with calm acceptance, when you look her in the eye and say, if you need to go, go, you short-circuit her emotional playbook. Because that kind of detachment doesn't come from ego. It comes from evolution. It comes from knowing that no matter who leaves, your mission doesn't, your growth doesn't. Your life doesn't stop just because someone else's feelings did. Women feel secure when they sense strength, but they test it when they sense fear. That's why she'll say things like, maybe I need space, or I don't know what I want. She's not always consciously trying to hurt you. She's trying to see if your world collapses when hers becomes uncertain. But when you stop worrying about her leaving, when you just say, take the space you need, without resentment or desperation, something inside her shifts. because she realizes she can't shake you anymore. And that realization turns her tests into trust. Because deep down, every woman wants a man whose peace can't be negotiated. You'll know you've reached a new level of strength when her silence doesn't bother you anymore. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop replaying old conversations in your mind. You stop wondering what she's doing, who she's with, what she's thinking, because none of that matters anymore. What matters is that your energy is yours again. You start pouring it into your goals, your habits, your discipline. You go to the gym with purpose, not to impress anyone. You read to grow, not to distract. You sleep peacefully, not because she texted, but because your mind is no longer begging for closure. That's freedom, brother. When you realize that peace isn't something she gives you, it's something you reclaim. When you stop worrying about her leaving, you start attracting from abundance instead of lack. The universe responds differently to men who move in power, because your energy no longer says, "Please love me." It says, "You'll have to earn my peace." That's when people start showing up differently, not just women, but everyone. Because the world respects men who respect themselves. The woman who left you starts noticing the glow, the calm, the unbothered rhythm in your life. She might even reach out, curious about the version of you she never met when you were consumed by fear. But by then, you'll have outgrown the need for her curiosity. You'll realize the man she's now attracted to is the one you became after she left. And that's the irony. Worrying about her leaving made you weak, but her leaving made you strong, because loss, when embraced correctly, refines you. It strips you of illusion. It forces you to sit with silence, to face your own insecurities, to rebuild your foundation. It teaches you the difference between attachment and connection, between validation and love, between wanting someone and needing them. The moment you grasp that difference, the fear disappears completely. You stop praying she'll return, and you start thanking her absence for reintroducing you to yourself. Once you stop worrying about being left, you start realizing that not everyone deserves to stay, because most people come into your life to serve a season, not a lifetime. They teach you something, awaken something, challenge something, and then they move on. And when you cling to them out of fear, you block your next chapter. But when you let go with gratitude, life rewards you with peace, so deep, it almost feels divine. That's when you finally understand, no one truly leaves you. They just complete their role in your growth story. And when the chapter closes, the book still belongs to you. There's a moment that every strong man reaches after a loss. That quiet night when he sits alone and realizes he's still here. The world didn't end. The silence didn't kill him. The loneliness didn't destroy him. In fact, it revealed something he never saw before: endurance. You start to notice the subtle power in stillness. You begin to enjoy the space that once terrified you. The noise in your head begins to fade, and in that quiet, you start to hear something deeper, your own voice. The one you'd been drowning out while chasing her approval, while checking your phone, while losing yourself in the highs and lows of her attention. That voice starts whispering truth. That peace doesn't come from being loved. It comes from being understood by yourself. The truth is, when you stop worrying about her leaving, you give yourself permission to live again. You start reconnecting with the things that make you you, the hobbies you abandoned, the friends you ignored, the ambitions you shelved. They start calling you back. You begin to remember that your world existed long before she arrived. You had purpose, curiosity, laughter, and dreams before her. She didn't complete you. She just reminded you of the parts you'd forgotten. But now it's your turn to remind yourself. You stop viewing life through her presence and start seeing it as your playground again. The gym becomes therapy. Solitude becomes sacred. Work becomes art. And for the first time in a long time, your reflection doesn't look desperate. It looks alive. The man who doesn't worry about being left starts moving differently. His eyes hold calmness instead of confusion. His words carry weight because he's no longer trying to convince anyone of his value. His energy feels grounded. It doesn't chase, it doesn't rush, it doesn't plead. And women feel that difference instantly. Because feminine energy can sense when a man is whole. She might not understand it consciously, but she'll feel drawn to it, because the man who no longer fears loss has already transcended the emotional games most people live trapped inside of. He's not trying to win love anymore, he's becoming it. When you stop fearing abandonment, you stop mistaking comfort for connection. You no longer hold on to toxic situations out of nostalgia. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop convincing yourself that her confusion means she just needs time. No, she's showing you her alignment, and your job is to listen. Because when you truly value yourself, peace becomes non-negotiable. You realize that love isn't proven by how much pain you can endure. It's proven by how much self-respect you refuse to compromise. And that's when you grow up emotionally. You stop calling chaos chemistry. You stop calling inconsistency a phase. You start recognizing that the love worth keeping never feels like survival. It's a strange paradox. The moment you stop worrying about her leaving, she starts fearing your absence. It's not manipulation, it's energy exchange. When you were desperate to hold on, she could relax, knowing she had control. But when you stop reacting, she starts realizing that control is gone. And that loss of control forces her to confront what she never wanted to admit, that your presence was never the problem. It was her dependence on being desired that made her feel secure. She wasn't used to peace, she was addicted to power. And when she meets a man who no longer plays that game, her emotions begin to spiral in a way that only silence can expose. Here's what you'll notice. When you stop worrying about her, your entire energy field changes. You walk differently, you talk slower, your laughter feels lighter. You stop explaining your boundaries and start enforcing them effortlessly. You don't need to convince anyone you've moved on. Your silence does that for you. You don't flaunt your growth, it's felt. And the more detached you become, the more magnetic your presence grows. Because confidence isn't loud, it's the quiet refusal to shrink for anyone's comfort. And that, brother, is what makes people turn their heads when you walk into a room. Not the clothes, not the body, the peace. You'll also notice that once you stop chasing love, the right kind of love starts chasing you. Because energy always mirrors back what you emit. When you were desperate, you attracted chaos. When you were anxious, you attracted uncertainty. But when you're calm, grounded, and detached, you start attracting people who match that vibration. Women who are emotionally aware, people who respect boundaries, opportunities that align with your peace. You stop fighting for attention because you've already become the kind of man attention naturally follows. That's the silent reward for letting go. Life gives you everything you stopped begging for. And here's the truth. Sometimes she has to leave for you to see who you really are. Because you never realize how much power you've given away until you stand alone and feel how light you are without the weight of needing to be needed. You begin to understand that love was never supposed to make you anxious. It was never supposed to make you feel small or confused or unstable. Love, when it's right, brings peace, not panic. And when you finally internalize that, you start to feel something powerful rising inside you, a standard. A quiet refusal to ever let fear disguise itself as devotion again. It's not that you stop caring, you just start caring correctly. You stop caring about how she feels about you and start caring about how you feel about yourself. You stop obsessing over what she might do and start focusing on what you can build. You stop chasing validation and start creating value. That shift in focus is what rebuilds your confidence from the ground up. Because when your energy is directed inward, it multiplies. Every ounce of attention you used to give her now becomes self-mastery fuel. And ironically, that's when she feels your absence most, because she can sense that the attention she once owned has now found a better home within you. You eventually reach a point where you stop seeing her leaving as rejection, you start seeing it as realignment. Maybe she wasn't meant to be part of your next level. Maybe her leaving was the universe protecting your destiny from being delayed. Because sometimes, the people you think you need most are the very ones blocking your growth. When they walk away, they take your weakness with them. They take the version of you that needed external validation. They take the emotional dependency that was keeping you stagnant. And what's left behind is a man sharpened by loss, purified by solitude, and reborn through acceptance. That's not heartbreak. That's initiation, the birth of emotional sovereignty. When you stop worrying about her leaving, something incredible happens. Time begins to work for you instead of against you. The same hours you used to spend overthinking are now filled with momentum. You wake up earlier, you breathe easier, you start showing up for yourself instead of chasing someone else's approval. Your focus sharpens because there's nothing distracting you anymore. You're not living in imaginary scenarios of what she might be doing or thinking. You're living in the present, and that's where your power always was. You start to realize how much energy fear used to drain from you. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being forgotten. All of it was noise. Now that it's quiet, you finally hear yourself think. Peace after attachment feels strange at first. You'll catch yourself expecting chaos, waiting for the next emotional hit, checking for messages that never come. It's not weakness, it's withdrawal. You were addicted to her presence, and addiction doesn't vanish overnight. But the beautiful thing about emotional withdrawal is that once you endure it, you become immune to emotional manipulation forever. You no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer fear silence. You stop confusing love with attention. Because you've learned that peace feels foreign, only because you were used to dysfunction. Once you adapt to it, there's no going back. You'll find that the longer you stay detached, the more she begins to feel the emptiness you left behind. It's not instant. It's slow, creeping, haunting. At first, she'll think she's free. Then, when the excitement fades and the distractions stop working, she'll realize something no one else gives her. The feeling of stability that your energy provided. She'll remember the way you never folded when she tested you. The way your silence used to calm her chaos. The way your composure made her feel safe even when she didn't understand it. That realization won't hit her all at once. It will grow, and by the time it does, you'll already be too far gone to be reached. See, what most men don't understand is that letting go doesn't just free her, it frees you. You stop being a hostage to her emotions. You stop being an actor in her tests. You stop trying to prove your worth through constant reassurance. When you stop worrying about being left, you detach from needing anyone's permission to exist. That's when life starts moving again. Opportunities appear. Your confidence returns, your aura shifts, because nothing in this world is more attractive to people, to energy, to the universe itself than a man who radiates peace and purpose. You start to realize something powerful. You were never afraid of losing her. You were afraid of losing the feeling you thought only she could give you. But once you learn to give it to yourself, you break the entire cycle. You stop being a seeker of love and become the source of it. You no longer walk into relationships hoping to be chosen. You walk in already knowing your worth. That's the kind of self-possession that changes your energy forever. Women feel it. People feel it. Even your silence starts to command respect, because the man who no longer fears being left becomes the man no one wants to lose. Eventually, you realize the ultimate truth. People don't leave you. They return to themselves. And you can't fault them for that. Everyone's fighting their own unseen battles. Everyone's chasing comfort in their own way. Sometimes your growth intimidates them. Sometimes your calmness exposes their chaos. Sometimes your depth triggers their shallowness. You can't take it personally, because once you mature emotionally, you understand that their leaving isn't a rejection, it's revelation. It shows you exactly where their capacity for connection ends. And instead of being bitter, you become thankful for the clarity. By this point, you stop chasing closure because you realize closure isn't something they give, it's something you create. It happens the moment you accept what happened, stop arguing with reality, and make peace with the fact that it was never meant to last forever. The closure is when you no longer need them to explain why they left. Because the truth is, you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed that relationship in the first place. What once broke you now feels like a memory that taught you boundaries. What once felt like betrayal now feels like redirection. What once felt like an ending now feels like evolution. The man who doesn't fear her absence becomes the one who shapes his own destiny, because his emotions no longer dictate his focus dictates his emotions. He doesn't allow temporary feelings to sabotage long-term purpose. He moves with calm confidence, knowing that what's meant for him will never require him to beg or bend. He's grounded, not guarded. He's detached, not disinterested. He's compassionate, but he's not controlled. This man doesn't chase love, he invites it. And the kind of women who are drawn to that energy are no longer the ones who play games. They're the ones who crave peace because they see it in him. The more you grow, the more you realize that loss isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. Because every loss strips you of what's unnecessary. Every goodbye refines your standards. Every silent night strengthens your spirit. You stop seeing heartbreak as tragedy and start seeing it as a spiritual cleanse. You're no longer haunted by the thought of her leaving. because now you understand that anyone who can walk away from you without looking back was never meant to stay. And you don't chase what's not meant. You outgrow it, you rise from it, you build from it. So brother, stop worrying about her leaving. Let her go if she must. Because when you finally release the fear of loss, you gain everything: clarity, composure, confidence, freedom. You start living from abundance, not attachment. You realize that peace isn't found in keeping people, it's found in keeping yourself. The moment you make peace with her absence, she loses all emotional control over you. And ironically, that's when life begins to chase you. Opportunities, women, purpose, happiness. Everything you once begged for now comes naturally. Because a man who no longer fears being left has already found what everyone else is searching for: peace that no one can take away.